Welcome to Norse Code, the #1 podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I'm your host producer. My name is James Pythagorean. Thank you guys so much for listening. And at the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous blogs and podcasts around the internet, most notably from the Wide Left Substack. He is Mr. Useful Human, Arif Hassan. Arif, I have a couple questions, but first off, who exactly was this Simpsons NFL Monday Night thing for? Because I don't think it was for the old, and I don't think it was for the young. I don't know who it's for.
So the people who lived through the heyday of The Simpsons as young people would be more your age, right? You got to see seasons 5, 6, 7 live,
yes.
And it does not seem like a Disney Plus, ESPN Plus subscription. I get if you have kids, but I don't know the answer. Someone texted me "Hey Arif, you watching the Simpsons thing?" And Mina Kimes is on it. I want to support her. She's awesome. But no. And I was like, no, are you? I'm surprised. Because I have YouTube TV. So I'm just going to watch it on my computer on YouTube TV. I don't want to log into ESPN Plus. ESPN Plus as an app, actually, in my experience, sucks. So I don't want to deal
awful.
with it.
It is absolutely awful.
So so it just doesn't know when you're logged in half the time. And that's not even most of the challenge with the anyway. I didn't want to deal with that just to watch a CG version of football. I wanted the clips I saw online were fun. Mo Sislak stopping a screen, great, cool. But I'm watching the game to watch the game, so I don't know who that's for. But it seems like a lot of people had fun, and I'm happy for Mina.
Good for her. But yeah, that was I can't. They kept showing little clips of it on during the broadcast. And even that, I'm no, I can't. And it's not that I have some I'm not like most fans where I refuse to watch any of the newer stuff. There's actually been a couple of good episodes recently that I have
That's what I've heard.
that I've managed to see. But no, this if I wanted to, it looked like the Simpsons hit and run video game, which was fun.
That's a good way to put it.
Which was fun back when I was in college. 20 years ago, 19 years ago, Jesus, 20 years ago this next month. Yeah. No. That's when that was cool. Not now. Special thanks, special shout out to Nick Vigil. Dude, appreciate you. You are, as far as I'm concerned, the reason why this game did not go into overtime and we didn't have to watch more of the Bengals and Cowboys. So thank you. I appreciate that. It's not often you get to see the kick block rule in action, where once the punt is kicked, it's fair game.
Incredible. Well, also, so a former Viking, former Bengal, fantastic work. Also, good job, Amani Oruwariye, for muffing a blocked punt. I've never heard of that in my life.
That is a sentence. That is a sentence that is cursed.
That crazy. So the way that the ref explained it, it seemed like the ball was live for recovery whenever. But when the broadcasters explained it, it was because Oruwariye muffed it or something, which I guess leads me to wonder when does the receiving team touching the ball make it live? Is it just on the downward arc, I guess? I don't know. But whatever it was, that was maybe the most hilarious ending to a game I've seen in a while. And football is stupid, so there's a lot of incredibly funny endings to games. But a tie game with 2 minutes left where you've pinned the opponent deep in their own territory where they've got a punt, and then you block the punt. As soon as that ball hits Nick Vigil's hand, he's got to think, oh, we've won.
I am the savior. This is going to work now.
Yeah, reuniting with Mike Zimmer a third time was worth it. It was all worth it. for this moment on primetime television where I, Nick Vigil, won us the game. And boy, I can't imagine so long as we're talking about The Simpsons, like you could pinpoint the exact frame his heart breaks.
Exactly. Yes.
Just, my God. So
when he's sitting on the sidelines, when he was sitting on the sidelines, and they kept showing him like losing his mind. It's like, man, if I remember the line correctly, and it's been a while, it's recess everywhere, but in that boy's heart. There, that's my deepest Simpsons deep dive.
That's so good. And he wasn't even the saddest one. It was Micah Parsons, who somehow they caught on camera walking entirely alone. Yeah. Right? No one near him, not his teammates, not a trainer. He was just walking alone. I thought he was going to kick the pylon, right? And I wouldn't have, like, and that pylon has like expensive camera equipment in it. I wouldn't have begrudged him kick the pylon, dude. That's awful.
Pylon deserves it at that point, yeah. Yeah. And welcome to this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys are all doing well. The Vikings win again. Kirk Cousins does not get his revenge game. Instead, he throws a couple of picks, and the Vikings emerge victorious through a full-on beat 'em down. A full forced beat 'em down by the end of the game. It's glorious. The most complete game, I'd say, since the Texans game. This was a fantastic. All sorts of obscure stats were broken. Obscure records were broken. It was great. This was a generational performance from the quarterback and from Addison and Jefferson. So we'll get to that. We've also got the mailbag as well. So again, thank you guys so much for listening to Norse Code. Before I start shilling, a quick reminder: we have the live show this week. December 12th, Thursday night.
Oh my God, it's here.
This week, Union 32 Craft House. We will be there. Recording should start about 7:30. Want to get there about 7 or a little bit before. Just make sure you got seats. This is going to be great. We are giving away 2 tickets to the Bears-Vikings Monday night game, so check that out. That will be given away after the show is finished. We've got a bunch of merch there. We've got gifts for the table. Arif is still on the fence as to whether or not he's going to show up, because I'm going to be giving him something he believes is going to be truly awful. No, you're going to be there. You just don't want to open the gift. I get it. Right. But no, this should be great. So check it out, December 12th. It is this week, this Thursday night. If you are a member of the Discord, I am going to attempt to put the audio through into the voice chat function of the Discord. So we did that for Denver. It mostly worked until the technical problem that we had that lasted like 20 minutes. So hopefully we don't run into that, but I will be attempting to run the live show live through the Discord. So hopefully all of that works the way it is supposed to. So you can check it out on there if you are unable to attend. But this Thursday, check it out. Should be great. If you would like to help us out financially, you can do so in a couple of different ways. You can buy Arif a drink at the live show, or you can go to patreon.com/NorseCode for $3.50 a month, or a little less for the year subscription. You get access to said Discord. You can also get access to bonus episodes, all of that. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode as well for a one-time donation, or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com and pick up any number of wonderful pieces of Norse Code merchandise, including the stickers, the t-shirts, all of that. Threadless is going through a bunch of sales right now as well. So it's if you were looking to potentially buy the Wreath shirt, which is available, you can check that out over at norsecode.threadless.com. All right,
Trust me, it makes a great gift. I keep on giving it to people.
You keep bombarding your brother with items.
Yeah, by people I mean my brother.
I have given my younger brother the Arif socks. He gave me a very dirty look. It was great.
That's perfect. For context, his younger brother bullied me a lot when we were younger.
He doesn't understand why you thought it was bullying. I feel like that's excellent.
I went to the hospital. No, we don't need to. Yeah.
For Arif's trauma corner. All right, let's get into the game itself. The Vikings now have 11 wins, 2 losses, and everyone is talking about them right now. You went from no one talking about the Vikings to now everyone talking about the Vikings, and specifically about Sam Darnold and his performance, which was phenomenal, quite frankly. It was 5 touchdowns for him, a hell of a lot of yards. This was just under a perfect passer rating, and had done things that no one since Dante Culpepper had pulled off. Even when Brett Favre was having his arguably the best season of his career in 2009, he didn't pull off what was pulled off in Minnesota this last week with 5 touchdown passes. So, first things first, Charles McDonald was absolutely correct. The corners for Atlanta were awful.
Jokes. Absolute jokes.
He was right. Jefferson and Addison were going to put up almost career numbers because of how awful they were. And that was my only thought I had, other than, wow, that man is turning US Bank Stadium's field into a slip and slide when Jefferson just backed into the end zone when the defender was on his stomach. That was my only thought, was, wow, Chuck was right. That's exactly what's going to happen here.
Yeah, it was a nice confluence of events where the Vikings had one of their best performances with regards to, quarterback play, along with seeing some of the worst cornerback play we've ever seen. That's how you get a 347-yard, 5-touchdown game. Just great play plus awful corners, which is a wonderful combination, I think. I find it kind of interesting that that was the scenario, because it felt like Darnold wasn't really, I don't know, feeling it for like a good chunk of that game, the first half of the game. Obviously, by the end of the game, yeah, no question, he was feeling it. But man, the first half of the game, it really felt like he was merely playing well, right? He was only playing pretty good football. And then the second half of the game, he's playing some of the best football we've ever seen a Vikings quarterback, which is, like, again, like you mentioned, saying kind of a lot. Right? Like this was truly, truly outstanding in every significant sense of the word.
And let me be perfectly clear. This is the most fun I have had watching the Vikings this year since either the Green Bay game or the first game of either the first game of the season or Texans. I feel like first game of the season was more fun because they just took it to Daniel Jones. Like every part of it was just like, oh yeah, we destroyed
Viking Daniel Jones.
Yeah, current Viking Daniel Jones. We just destroyed him. And Van Ginkel nearly got the same sort of pick off a screen. So like this
that would have been great.
That would have completed it. I think they would have sat Darnold at that point. He probably wouldn't have hit 5 touchdowns after that.
Yeah, that's true.
They would have said you've done enough.
We're trading touchdowns at that point.
Yep.
When you get to a 42-21 game.
Sit down, King. You're good. Dance around to Mr. Brightside. Instead, we're going to have Nick Mullins come out, and that's the biggest insult you can have. Is you've had such a good day that we're gonna dunk on Kirk Cousins like this.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. No, Darnold did almost everything, right? Like he did a really wonderful job evading a truly tremendous amount of pressure, especially, again, the first half, 50% pressure rate. Truly tremendous amount of pressure throughout the game. He did a fantastic job modulating kind of how much arm strength he needed on a bunch of throws. Now, obviously, there was the one amazing throw where he didn't really have much control over the ball. Not his fault. He got hit as he was thrown. That ended up being a touchdown. So, sometimes you just have a good day, right? Sometimes, the coin flips in your favor, right? But no, he did a really wonderful job making sure that he was like threading some really accurate passes, going through his progressions really quickly, like all of the stuff that you talk about, like the things that you want in a quarterback. When you get rid of any passes where it was like batted at the line of scrimmage, or he was hit as he was thrown, or anything like a spike or a drop or anything like that, which by the way, I don't think there were any drops in this game. But when you get rid of all of that, his like accuracy rate was like 89% or something like that. He missed like a couple of throws at best. Yeah, I don't know. Like he had an outstanding game. It's fun when you get a quarterback who has that kind of game, when they've really got an arm and they really like to rip it, because you've had like really good games from like Teddy, where it's like a methodical drive down the field and it has a different sense to it, where it's just like inevitable. Whereas when somebody like a Darnold or a Josh Allen or someone with like a big arm that really likes to throw downfield, it's like overwhelming, right? There's like a different kind of foreboding sense that comes with it. And this one's pretty fun. I've seen a lot of the standard kind of drop back, throw 10 yards, always hit them kind of games, and those are great. But this one was really fun.
So the Vikings went from no one talking about them to everyone talking about them this week. Partially because the Chiefs limped into that win, or rather decided to go off to make a bank shot in order to win their game. Yeah. And the Lions won on Thursday. So the top two teams aside, the Vikings now show up and do this to Kirk Cousins. And admittedly, if we can start on defense for the Vikings, Kirk immediately ran down the field and scored. And it was a running touchdown, which the Vikings haven't been letting in. And
they let multiple rushing touchdowns in this game.
The theme of the day seemed to, for offense for them anyway, seemed to be, we're going to run on the Vikings and we're going to be successful.
Yeah, and they were throughout the game. I think that's kind of one element of not having Pat Jones available, is that he was a really good run defender. But through the middle, we saw some problems. So like Harrison Phillips entered the game with back problems. I think that kind of explains his poor performance. And I mentioned that he wasn't playing all that well on the football machine that we recorded earlier today, or not football machine, Minnesota Football Party. Sorry, it's like the same people, whatever. And Sam mentioned that like the PFF like really hated Harrison Phillips' game, which I get. Like, it wasn't a very good game. And I checked the score later. It was like a 25 or something like that. Good Lord. So like, obviously not having Pat Jones wasn't the one thing. But you don't have him. You don't have Ivan Pace, who's been playing well against the run this year. You don't have some of the key elements that you typically have when it comes to that kind of run defense. Josh Metellus is missing a tackle here or there. Andrew Van Ginkel's missing a tackle here or there. Jonathan Grenard's missing a tackle here or there. Like, guys that are not usually missing tackles or not usually getting dragged along are. So it was a really bad day against the run. But, obviously you get to the end of the game, you're ahead by 3 scores. They can't run the ball. So you just kind of outduel them. And that was helpful, but it really just kind of came down to forcing Cousins into mistakes. That was really more the difference, because the defense didn't really show up outside of that coverage unit, which, we saw them get 2 picks. We saw them almost get a 3rd pick. That was great. But the front 7, which is typically where we've talked about the strength of this Vikings defense, it didn't really produce a lot of pressure up front, didn't really stop the run that much. And the pressure stuff is not as bad as it seems. So they created a pressure rate of like 25, 23%, something like that. It didn't change from half to half. Like the first half was 25, the whole game was 23 and a half, whatever. They didn't create very much pressure at all. That doesn't entirely mean that they did a poor job, although in this case, I think they also did a poor job. But the fact that the Vikings sent blitzes on like over 60% of Cousins' snaps, or whatever it was, actually, I should just look it up now. I think in the first half, it was like 70% of his dropbacks. But let's see what we got, the pressure. Yeah, 65 point, a completely psycho team. 65.8% blitz rate. that did have an impact on the game, even though they only had one sack, even though they didn't have much of a pressure rate, because Cousins like threw faster in this game than it feels like he ever has over the course of his career. And that meant that they didn't really have a ton of opportunities for deep shots. Obviously, we saw like a bunch of those intermediate passes at around the 20-yard mark over the middle of the field, which you can do on some of these quick plays. But it was really just kind of the 49-yarder to Darnell Mooney on the left sideline in the 2-minute drill that saw a ton of deep stuff. I'm going to take a look at Cousins' like time to throw this year. Yeah, that was his fastest time to throw this year. Not a shock. So that's something you have to take into account. But I still think they didn't do as great a job against an offensive line that I don't think has played outstandingly this year. It's played all right. But it's not like an offensive line where it's like, the Lions or some of those Eagles offensive lines where it's just really difficult to produce pressure, even if they have a quarterback just kind of hanging in there forever. They should have still produced more pressure than they did, but we did get to see the impact of that, which was an accelerated throwing process, which did lead to a couple of like turnover-worthy plays for him. I think that showcases like why the Vikings can't just rely on having this really outstanding, if volatile defense. Like you mentioned, they didn't do well against the run. Bijan Robinson had like a 50% success rate, which is like really difficult for a running back to get to. Tyler Algier was even better. He had the game of his life. That was incredible. Couldn't get tackled at all. He had like a 60% success rate, which like a 40% success rate for a running back is like really, really good. So this was kind of a nuts scenario for them. But yeah, the Vikings couldn't get off their blocks. They couldn't get past the offensive line. They couldn't get into the backfield. When they did, they were missing tackles. Even Jalen Redmond, who had a couple of tackles for loss, one of the only ones who had a tackle for loss in the game, also got pushed around a little bit, which again, like, when you consider kind of the context, like, the Vikings signed him for nothing. They got him out of the UFL. Great signing, great pickup. He's already outplaying his expectations, but it's not as if he had a good game either, despite posting some of the best stats. It was not an outstanding day for the defense until the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it was at that point that the dam broke. But Kirk Cousins right away was able to with scripted plays, go down the field, score. I will say that I was a bit surprised at some of the coaching decisions that were made by the Falcons.
Oh, you mean like the decision to take the penalty, go for it on 4th and 2nd, and then take a delay of game so that they could punt from the same spot as they were before?
There were a couple of things. Going for the field goal right before the half was absolutely one of them. Absolutely a coward move. And you had all the momentum in the world, and you ended up going for the field goal there to tie it up. I don't pretend to be the person who I've played a lot of Madden, which is my which tends to be my oh yeah, well, if you do this, you're going to end up being successful. But there were a number of decisions that were made there that were truly baffling.
Yeah, I don't really know how the Falcons approach this process, honestly. I mean, like a 20-yard field goal, 4th and 2. You have timeouts, you have 13 seconds left. I don't know, man. That was weird. But it felt like they kind of, not consistently, but they kept on putting themselves into weird positions and not really making up for it anywhere else, right? Like, obviously they had a huge penalty problem. That's a little bit different. But I think it's like once they missed the 4th and 5 in the first quarter, they decided they weren't going to do anything smart after that. I don't know how else to put it. It was just like they couldn't figure out what they wanted to do on every subsequent consequential decision. The end of half one, the other 4th down decision that they made, I think on the other side of the half, really the only one that made sense was going for 2, right? Because that made it a tie game as opposed to a 1-point game. But yeah, after that, I don't know. I guess the 4th and 8 decision to kick kind of makes sense on the Minnesota 11. Other than that, yeah, they just kept on making these really bizarre decisions.
Can we talk about Kirk Cousins' interceptions? I feel like we should spend some time on some of the uglier interceptions that we've seen him throw. And, like, that's been the theme for him now over the past couple of games. It's like 8 interceptions and no touchdowns that he's thrown.
Yeah, it's some of, like, the worst stretches of quarterback play I think we've ever seen. It's like really tough to throw 8 interceptions with no touchdowns over like a 4-game. It's like a 4-game span, I think, right? Bud, right? I don't know how else to. Like, my guy, what are you doing?
There was a moment during the game where he scrambled to run away from pressure, and I honestly had the thought that his legs were just going to give out. Like, he had just enough to like run to the sideline.
He knows he doesn't have the juice for that. Like, he knows his legs can't cash that check. So I have no idea why he was like the first interception, double, maybe even triple covered, right? Like, you're just throwing it right into. I don't know, like, what it reminded me of, like, the interceptions Jameis Winston threw in college, right? Where it's actually really funny because I remember, like, Florida State doing, like, PR for them. It was always like an underneath guy, like this lurking linebacker, in this case Josh Metellus, where everything looks good if you don't take into account the defenders that are ahead of the receiver as opposed to the ones that are behind the receiver, right? And it's like he just didn't see Metellus there, which is like fairly uncharacteristic of Cousins. I remember when Florida State, was talking about Jameis Winston's interceptions his final year in college. They were like, "Oh, we logged it. We logged all of the interceptions, and we figured out whose fault all of the interceptions were. And like 8 of them were actually a teammate of his running the wrong route." And you're like, "Okay, man, sure." And then Jameis Winston went on to never throw an interception in the NFL. So
famously, it's like his best quality. Are you
really
implying that Kirk can get back to being an MVP caliber quarterback if he gets LASIK?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think if he gets LASIK,
that's going to be the thing.
Yeah.
That's
that first interception, I have no idea what he was looking at. Which I guess LASIK could help with. The second interception, skipping the Shaq Griffin mutual catch, right? Simultaneous catch.
You could every time that it turns into a shared catch like that, it goes to offense. But his hands were not around that ball. And him celebrating his first down without the ball was very funny.
Yeah, that was very silly. Yeah.
That was absolutely group project. I didn't do anything and we got an A.
Yeah. I wish that's happened to me once. But anyway, I think it's like one of those situations where like in real life, that's a pick, right? But by the way the rules are written, that's always a catch. Like, maybe not always. Like, if you call it an interception on the field, they wouldn't overturn it necessarily. But because it's really difficult to like see that the bottom hand isn't even on the ball live, you're probably not going to, right? So, yeah, I think in real life we'd be like, well, that's obviously like an interception. But I think like just the way these rules are written, you just have to call it a catch. So we'll ignore that. That was a really aggressive throw from Cousins, which we know he likes to challenge tight windows a lot more than his like reputation has suggested over the years. Okay, fine. At least you understand the thought process behind that throw. You couldn't figure it out for the Metellus interception, fine. But you get where that throw is coming from. The Murphy interception. First of all, dude, why didn't you run out? What in the world, my guy? But it was just like way off. Like, I don't know what else to put it. It was just inaccurate. Decent decision. I understand where you're coming from. The guy's actually pretty well covered, so probably don't throw that ball anyway. But like, just like a mile over the intended receivers. Like, Murphy had to stretch out to get it, which made it look really impressive, obviously. But he had to like really Gumby that interception, right? And like Michael Jordan in Space Jam, that interception, right? Like, look, it was It was a lot. He was way off. So you have like three kinds of interceptions where it's like, oh, you were a little bit too aggressive. That was the one that was not an interception. That was Drake London, right? There's the one where it's you just don't see a defender, I guess. That's Josh Metellus. There's one where you're just inaccurate. All right, man. I can see how the Chargers baffled you so. That's a crazy set of circumstances, and I'm at least it occurred on a day when the Vikings, it turns out, did not need to actually get pressure.
And it's also worth noting that he should have run that out of the end zone. Like,
what were you think? Like we like if it hadn't already happened this year, I'd understand, right? Like oh, you thought it was a touchback, you thought running into the end, like you thought the momentum would carry you, and so that it would qualify as like a touchback. Okay, I understand why you thought that, but like this happened earlier this year, and the ball was returned to the one. This time it was returned to the two, but it was returned to the one. You have to know. Like you have to like if receivers can be so aware of where the sideline is that calling them inch perfect would be an insult to how precise they are. Like they are millimeters perfect on some of these sideline catches. If receivers can be that aware of like where the end zone is, where the sideline is, where the down marker is, surely a cornerback can be aware of where the end zone is. I understand that like other people were telling him to like chill out on that one a little bit, to run it or to take a knee, but you gotta have confidence that you know where that ball was caught, and if you don't, how are you in the position that you're in? Actually, you know, like I have no idea how. Like again, it didn't matter because it set up like a 98-yard drive, right, for Sam Darnold. But like, what if it didn't? Like it's. I'll say this. It is wonderful to learn lessons in a win, right? The lessons that don't cost anything are the best lessons to learn. But you know, the guy that was actually telling him to take a knee was a rookie? It was Dallas Turner was the one. Everyone else is ready to block. Dallas Turner was like, no, take a knee. Why are you, Byron Murphy, 7-year vet at this point, listening to Dallas Turner? No. Just no.
Be better.
Be better.
So that happened. That was a fantastic pick. Kirk, I don't want to say that it was one of the more cursed jerseys I've ever seen, him in a Falcons jersey at US Bank Stadium, but it was, for me, it was right up there with the Randy Moss in a Titans jersey for that like 1 week. It looked wrong.
That was evil.
Yeah.
The Moss in a Titans jersey is truly evil. Moss in a Raiders jersey, I get it. That makes sense. That follows.
That was like 2
obviously,
years.
Moss in a Viking. Yeah. Moss in a Vikings jersey, obviously. Moss in a Vikings jersey, again. Actually kind of weird because the jersey's different now.
Mm-hmm.
Moss in a Patriots jersey, he forced us to get used to that. That's fine. The Titans one, ugh. And yeah, if Kirk was playing well, I might eventually acclimate to this Falcons jersey thing, but for now, it's a bad look, especially because it's like 18.
Yeah, this whole thing screams one and done.
Yeah,
it's
like he's going to finish the year as the starter. I don't think they're going to bench him for Michael Penix yet, because if they weren't going to do it after the Chargers game, they're not going to do it.
Yeah,
but yeah, there's no way he's the starter next year, right?
That is. Yeah, I'm just trying to envision it. Like they're just gonna eat a hilarious amount of cap, and then have someone else start.
Yeah, the rookie they drafted.
That's a hell of an insurance policy, but you do that without signing, Kirk for that amount of money.
Yeah,
that's just anyway. So Kirk has himself a day that he would prefer not to have had in Minnesota. And let's talk Vikings offense, because as predicted, the wide receivers go off, and Addison finds himself in the end zone 3 times, and Jefferson twice, including that bomb that he pulled some Mahomes-style moves out of, which, if you're going to look at the difference between the two quarterbacks, if you're looking at the difference between Cousins and Darnold, Darnold can do that, and Cousins cannot, even before the injury.
Yeah. That's, yep. I don't remember even how many like rushing yards Darnold had in this game, but like seeing him kind of move around in the pocket, it's just so nice because the Vikings have so often gotten either immobile or formerly mobile quarterbacks, right?
McNabb, I'm looking in your direction.
and just like seeing them solve problems out there, which is actually like how I talked about it a little bit on the football machine today when we were talking about the receivers. It's just like it's nice that the Vikings can solve problems, right? Having Darnold move around, having him actually be capable of like being a legitimate running threat, like when the Vikings run like 3 deep routes and it's man coverage, Darnold instantly makes the decision, is it easier to run for 15 yards or throw for 40? And sometimes he's just like, yeah, 15 yards. I'm going to make this decision in 2 seconds. And he does it. It's a first down. Fantastic. You didn't really get that from Cousins because he was never thinking in those terms, right? Like he just couldn't. It was necessary, of course, today for Darnold, or this week for Darnold to like be able to move around and like dance around in the pocket and then huck it deep across his body. Congrats, Josh Oliver. Because of how poor the offensive line was, that sucks. But again, you can solve problems. Like Cousins has a day where the left guard can't pick up a blitz to save his life. Cousins is dead. That's his day now. Darnold can just do stuff. And we've talked before about how like part of the bargain with Sam Darnold is that some of that stuff is like very stupid and you don't know until the last microsecond how stupid it is. And in this game, we just didn't see anything stupid. In another game, we might see 2 stupid things to make up for it. I don't know. But like that aggressiveness, that mobility, he actually has a really good feel for when pressure is showing up, which is like very funny considering his career, like the seeing ghosts moment. He's actually like pretty good at understanding when the pressure is behind him and bearing down on him without having to like look at it. Like that's awesome. So you combine that with his mobility and his arm and his aggressiveness, and you get some like truly great moments from him that you just don't get with Cousins. And like I know that like we're spending a lot of this time on the episode talking about how Darnold is better than Cousins and stuff like that, and maybe don't focus so much on the guy that's gone. But that's what the game is about, right? The story of the game is the guy who replaced the guy who was here for 6 years. And we're seeing that it was a great, don't want to use that word, a very good substitution. That wasn't even intentional. James, I don't even know if you picked up on what I almost did.
No, I heard it. I was waiting for you to do something stupid.
Yeah, well, I didn't. So fantastic. I'll like Darnold. I will do something stupid later to make up for it.
Excellent.
But yeah, great move. Yeah, I just wish the offensive line had like, because it wasn't like anybody individually was playing that poorly. Like, yeah, you could have gotten a little bit more out of Bradbury, but like, it was really just really awful communication. At least from my read, I thought that was not wonderful. But hey, Darnold made up for it.
I mean, if we want to look at how the line performed, and I feel like we should, it seemed like this was, we were told before, this was not a team that rushed the passer, and right away they were able to get stops and sacks.
Yeah, it just and from like everybody, like it wasn't just like one, like it wasn't just like Grady Jarrett wrecking the Vikings. In fact, I don't even know if he had that good of a game. It was just like everybody was taking it to the Vikings, and a lot of it was you would have like this nose tackle up against the center, and like your left guard is supposed, because it's a front where the 3 technique is away from the left guard, right? Break Brandel, right? Which means that his double team, if he's going to double team someone, it's either the edge rusher, which is very weird, or the nose tackle, which is very normal. And very often in this game, he would just choose the the edge rusher. I don't know, but like Eddie Goldman had a day when he hasn't had a day in like 5 years. Charles was laughing about that on the interview. You saw actually even Brian O'Neill had a mistake, right? Arnold Ebiketie, that sack. He had a couple of wins today. Caden Ellis had a fantastic day. The broadcast couldn't stop saying his name, just like everywhere. And so you got poor communication from Blake Brandel. You have poor pass protection from Cam Akers. You saw Aaron Jones give up some stuff too. Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. I don't know what else to say. I didn't like it.
Did not enjoy. So was it just a situation where the corners were inept, or what made it so that Jefferson and Addison were able to have just such great games?
I think a lot of it's that the corners were inept, but I don't want to just isolate it to that, right? Because if you give a deep threat receiver that's pretty skilled, like decently skilled, that many one-on-ones, he's going to go off. And that's what happened with Jordan Addison. He had a bunch of one-on-ones, and he found ways to get open because that's what happens in that scenario. It's pretty unfair for a corner to not have help. Why didn't he have help? Because Justin Jefferson was soaking up all of the attention. And we saw that on the broadcast again and again because they kept on replaying like different elements where they're like, hey, look at Justin Jefferson here. He's got like a double team that frees up like TJ Hawkinson here, Jordan Addison here. And so that was like a big part of it, right? Like, yeah, the corners didn't do the job that they needed to do. Sure. Also, Addison is really incredible at deep ball tracking. He's really incredible at some of these like tertiary, really difficult receiver skills to learn or find, right? Like Cordell Patterson is a tremendously bad deep ball tracker. So when you did get him open deep, he wasn't going to find the ball, which is like very frustrating. But Jordan Addison knows exactly where he needs to be. And so he's got that, right? He can win contested catches. Not like a contested catch receiver, but he can win some of those. So we saw like a little bit of that in this game where a lot of those one-on-ones allowed him to use some of those tertiary hard-to-teach skills to really maximize what he was doing on the field. So that's part of it. Part of it was that Darnold was doing a pretty good job of making sure that defenders were always in the wrong position. There's like a replay from the broadcast where he's looking off Jesse Bates. Jesse Bates stays with his assignment on Jefferson and misses that there's just a deep threat behind him. And Darnold uncorks it to hit Addison. Addison scores, right? One of his, like, what was it, 3 touchdowns of the game? So, yeah, some of it's like, hey, that corner fell down. You took advantage of it. Sucks to be Atlanta. Score, right? Some of it is Justin Jefferson is just incredible. Fantastic. Awesome. Score. And some of it's like Darnold is like really making sure that these receivers have as much space as possible. So, yeah, the Atlanta corners played poorly, but it's always a little bit more than that. Really good ball placement, really good decision making, really great offensive game plan.
This was another week where it didn't feel like the rush, like the running game was really existent. It didn't feel like they were doing much. He was having Aaron Jones was having a great amount of success at the beginning of the game, but that was the beginning of the game. And it didn't feel like they really utilized it. And obviously they didn't need to in the fourth quarter, but it felt like, especially in the first half, that after the first quarter, rather, it was wanting. Like, it seemed like it should have been there.
Yeah, they only had 18 attempts. They had 4 scrambles from Darnold, 2 kneels from Mullins, so technically they had 24 carries, but they had 18 attempts rushing the ball. And they were really, really successful doing it, right? Aaron Jones averaged 5.6, Cam Akers 7.4. They each, forced several missed tackles. They each had multiple first downs. Cam Akers had 2 on his 6 or 5 carries. Jones had 3 on his 13 carries, but also like broke off some big ones. He had 1 run over 15 yards. He had a couple runs over 10. Just like consistently successful. It was a nice like comeback game for Aaron Jones, but like he touched the ball 13, or I guess he touched the ball 15 times because he also caught it twice. But like he rushed the ball 13 times. It's just a pass forward team. Whenever you're kind of in an ambiguous situation where it kind of makes sense to run, kind of makes sense to pass, the Vikings pass the ball. And that's fine. That's kind of a better way to organize your team. But you do get moments where you've got these really talented players like Jones, and you don't really give them a ton of opportunities to shine. But hey, he didn't fumble the ball. He averaged like 3.5 yards after contact per attempt, which is outstanding. And it was consistent, right? Because he's averaging 5.6 yards per attempt total, but his longest run was like 15 yards or something like that. It wasn't like he kept on, like, it wasn't like he had a 40-yarder and then he like didn't do much for the rest of the game. He kept on producing like these like pretty significant gains. It just like wasn't in the cards that was going to be a big part of what the Vikings were going to do. So,
am I just Zimmer-pilled, where I feel like we should be running more?
Yeah, I think you're a little Zimmer-pilled. I mean, they won by 21 points, James.
Well, yes, I'm familiar with how the game ended, but during the first 3 quarters anyway, for whatever reason, it felt like they should have been doing more. Zimmer-pilled is officially a thing. We can.
I'll say this: the reason they probably didn't run as much as they could have, or as much as it felt like they could have, despite how successful they were running the ball, probably because they were like taking all these sacks to put them in like 2nd and 20. And it's just like, we got to throw it twice in a row now. I think there's a lot of it.
Yeah. So after this game, everyone's talking about the Vikings. No one was talking about the Vikings, and now everyone is talking about the Vikings because everyone has an opinion on what they should do with Sam Darnold.
Yeah, it's like I've gotten like a bunch of DMs like, well, they got to keep him, right? And I'm like, I've said pretty consistently that they probably won't, that the only thing that's probably going to change their mind is not just a playoff win, but maybe multiple playoff wins. At that point, you just have to be like, all right, excellent work, my guy.
Yep.
Here's $50 million.
We got a Lombardi out of it. McCarthy can sit another year.
Yeah, it's fine. He'll be fine. It's we have a trophy, and you can just do the Jordan Love thing and just sit forever. Who cares, right? Okay. Other than that, I'm pretty like it's just I feel like yeah, it's going to look kind of silly to take a strong stance now. Anything could change by the end of the year, by March, right, of next year. But I just feel like there's been a ton of local reporting on this from like beat reporters that are really plugged in that have been very consistent about this. And then you get Adam Schefter and Jay Glazer and Jordan Schultz, like all of them come out and say, yeah, they're probably not going to re-sign him. It really is just like they're going to move on. So you've got a bunch of local reporters that basically all agree. Now you've got like the national, like super big breaking news guys. They all agree. But Sam Darnold throws for 5 touchdowns, and now you're like, well, we got to talk about it. No, we don't.
And like it's 5 touchdowns against an
abysmal team.
Bad pass defense. Hilariously bad. Everyone looks amazing.
Yeah, I had a follower who was like, I only placed 1 bet this week, and it was because I listened to Charles on Norse Code, and he bet like $300 in a 3-pick same game parlay, and it was like Sam Darnold, Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson. He won like $900. Like it was pretty clear what was happening in this game.
Right, I can imagine how excited he was when he saw the second Jefferson touchdown as he just slowly waltzed backwards. It was like that was the day, but it's blowing the minds of a lot of national people who are now being forced to look into to look at the Vikings. Be like, I can't imagine a scenario where you let that guy walk, and you're like, yeah, I can. I can.
We've been imagining it.
I can see the situation that causes them to keep him, but like, that is the best case scenario. That is the world's best problem to have. And if it happens, great. But it was clear from the beginning what was going to happen here, and it's not like he is going to be in a situation in March where he's going to take $20 million. He's going to be eligible to earn a hell of a lot of money. And some team, possibly in New Orleans, is going to pay him an abysmal amount of money. It's good for him.
Yeah, they said at the very beginning of the season, right? That this was going to be the get Sam Darnold paid year. What good is that if you don't get Sam Darnold paid after a season like this?
I mean, is Darnold going to go to the playoffs, play 2 playoff games, and then be like, "Yeah, I'll do $15 million, and I'll be a backup"? Not a chance.
Yeah, that's not happening.
That is the opposite of what is going to happen here. Darnold's going to get a whole boatload of money, and good. He deserves it. He has played his butt off this year and deserves every bit of the money that he's going to get out of it. Now, that said, win the Super Bowl for us, please. I don't want to do the one before I die thing, but some of us don't have a lot of time left. Please do this for us. Let's just go to the mailbag, and let's start with a second hit has hit Drew Bledsoe, who asks, for the Jameson Williams honorary gambling corner, how should we thank Charles for telling us to hammer the over on the Vikings, and did Arif change his credit score with his winnings?
Okay. No, so if you listen to the Minnesota Football Party, I actually did not make that much money this week. The Vikings helped, for sure. But then I tailed some bets I shouldn't have tailed. It is actually Luke Braun's fault this time. I have the text messages to prove it. So no, my credit score did not change. I'm still in the tank. PayPal.me/norsecodepodcast.
Yeah, send it to me. Send it to the guy running the business, and we'll talk.
No, I mean, like, I'm positive on winnings for the year, but just like I should have. Sometimes our guests lament the team, and then the team blows the Vikings out of the water. So I don't always take the guests 100% at their word when they make a prediction on the game. And this time, it was Charles. He's one of the smarter guests we ever bring on, so maybe I should have just done it. But
oh, well. Let's go to Ingram's unemployed left foot, who asks, is defensive holding on a play that involves no offensive movement the most silly penalty possible?
Okay, I just want to point out, this is the second time Ingram's unemployed left foot has written in. Ed Ingram is still, like, employed. Like, that, he's getting paid. He's just not starting, but he's still employed. But otherwise, like, yeah, actually, like, what in the world? I mean, that did happen. Like, they showed the replay. That did happen. But, like, what in the world?
It was creative, if nothing else.
For sure.
Drunken Vike asks, is Kevin O'Connell the most aggressive offensive play caller in the NFL? I feel like we're trying to push downfield constantly and succeeding, and with some regularity, in a way that I don't see other teams trying. On top of this, let's go to Michael Johnston, who asks, is there anything like wins above replacement for head coaches? With Kevin O'Connell, it's clear to me he's bringing something to the team, but analytics demands something more than just gut feeling. Could someone just take the WAR, the wins above replacement, for players on a team and measure that against actual wins to compute the WAR for the coaching staff?
So that is possible, and I did something somewhat similar back when John DeFilippo was the offensive coordinator to see if there was a possibility of kind of trying to measure how good or bad an offensive coordinator was. And it was in a piece where I was like, we should probably give John DeFilippo another shot. But in exploring this, I found out that John DeFilippo, I put this in the piece, John DeFilippo is like one of the worst offensive coordinators in the NFL over the past, like, at the time it was like, 2018, something like that, over the past 5 years, right? And I was like, look, it's bad. It's actually worse than you think. Here's the evidence. But maybe they should hold on to him for a little bit longer. And then, like, 2 weeks later, Mike Zimmer fired him. Rightly so, by the way. Of, like, the many offensive coordinator movements in the Mike Zimmer era, that one was the most correct one. And what I did was I used PFF grade, which at the time, if you knew how to do it, you could find the plus minus scores. Now you can't even do that. And I used that to construct a points per drive expectation based off of PFF grade. and then like the offensive coordinator plus minus based off of that. And yeah, it was okay because coaches also have an impact on like player technique and putting players in positions to succeed and stuff like that, and that'll affect the PFF grade. It was okay, but you could probably do something along the lines of that. Also, I want to point out that like Chase Stewart at Football Perspective, which doesn't post nearly as much or doesn't show up in my timeline. Maybe it's just like a Twitter algorithm thing, but I used to read it religiously. He had a piece a while back where he tried to figure out how many wins above Pythagorean coaches were. So Pythagorean wins are only named that because you have to like square the numbers a lot. Or how many wins you should expect to get based off of your point differential. You can actually find Pythagorean wins over at FTN Fantasy, which is where DVOA is hosted. It used to be over at Football Outsiders before they got bought by like 3 different companies, and then crashed. And then tried to hire me while the website wasn't active. Guess what? That didn't work. Like I was on the phone with them, and they're like, "Yeah, we think about bringing you on." And I'm like, I'm on your website right now, and I'm getting a 404 error, and you haven't paid anybody. Like famously, like there was a whole discussion about this. How you haven't paid anybody. Why would I take a job with you? This is actually what I asked, right? As you could tell, they didn't give me a very good answer. But yeah, based off of what the point differential was, you can kind of predict the number of wins, and you could see how many wins over Pythagorean you had. And assuming you had enough seasons under your belt, you could begin to detect a pattern. And Stewart called it the Dungy Index because Tony Dungy like led the league when he did it. This was like almost a decade ago now. Led the league when he calculated it. I'm sure now Andy Reid would, right? One thing to kind of keep in mind is that, of course, Tony Dungy and Andy Reid had the best quarterback in the NFL as their quarterback. That probably helped them win a lot of close games. But I think that maybe you could combine the two measures, like win expectation or point differential expectation based off of PFF grade, plus Pythagorean expectation, and maybe over a long enough sample, we could determine something. But it should be noted, like, yeah, the Vikings were really good at one-score games in 2022. Then they were bad at them in 2023. Enough that nerds like me kept on taking victory laps when they lost these close one-score games. And now they're good at them again. And I just feel like that's not enough of a sample of being consistently good in close games for you to suggest that this is a durable skill, necessarily at least, of the coach. That said, going all the way back again, he was playing with like Nick Mullins and Josh Dobbs last year. So, if we're going to take points away from Andy Reid and Tony Dungy for getting to play with Peyton Manning and Patrick Mahomes, maybe we should give a couple of points for playing with Josh Dobbs, Jaron Hall, and Nick Mullins. I am going to do a piece, hopefully later this week. I've an insanely busy week this week on this close game thing. So hopefully I'll be able to explore this a little bit more. Maybe I'll even include some insights based off of the question you just asked. Also, as for the most aggressive thing, no. So you could either do it by like the total number of deep attempts this year, which belongs to Indianapolis, followed by like Denver of all teams, despite having like Bo Nix. I have to give it up at some point and just like admit that Bo Nix is good, but I'm still not in me to do it. Or you could do it by percentage, where again Indianapolis is at the top, Green Bay is near the top, and that was over the course of 2 quarterbacks of Jordan Love, Malik Willis. Indianapolis over the course of 2 quarterbacks, Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson. Jacksonville with 2 quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones. The Chargers, 1 quarterback, Justin Herbert, and Buffalo, 1 quarterback, Josh Allen. So they're the top 5 in deep throw percentage. So Minnesota's 9th. They're not even in the top 8. So no, KOC is not the most aggressive play caller, but he tends to get quarterbacks where he can coax them into more aggressive play styles than they're used to. Now, Darnold does take chances habitually. That's what he does. But this is still, I believe, his highest deep throw rate. I'll probably check that later. If not, it's just important to note that like Shane Steichen has always been like this in Indianapolis, where they throw deep a lot. Like it's not just that you had Anthony Richardson, whose only thing is throwing deep, and Joe Flacco, whose historical thing has been throwing deep. Shane Steichen like did this with like Carson Wentz. So yeah, I think that, you know, taking a look at like Matt LaFleur, taking a look at Press Taylor, you could find more aggressive. It's just that like Kevin O'Connell is like very, very good at it.
Let's go to Dr. Tentacles, who asks, am I missing something, or is Brandel just straight up ignoring pass rushers to join Bradbury for a pointless double team on half the snaps?
No, you nailed it. Although it's not to join Bradbury, it's to abandon Bradbury. Like that's how the Eddie Goldman sack happened. Bradbury does need help on double teams. He will, though, ignore blitzers to help Bradbury when he should not be ignoring blitzers. That happened more last week than this week, but it did happen this week as well. But yeah, that's how like Mac Wilson, I think, got one of his 2 sacks, was that Brandel just like abandoned it. And it was like, hey, that's your guy, man. Come on.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Let's go to Beef Brewski, who asks, Andrew Kramer posted audio of an interview with Josh Metellus a few weeks ago. At one point, Metellus says, we all know how Flores feels about rookies. Does Flores have a reputation for being tough on rookies? Is his defense uniquely difficult for rookies to learn?
Yes and no. So he's got a reputation for rookies based off of the Tua Tagovailoa thing. So, you know, take that for what you will. Last year, we didn't really get a ton of an understanding of how he feels about rookies because like everyone kept getting hurt. And so everyone started playing. So I don't know that we got like a bunch there that told us he hated rookies or anything like that. But yeah, I think that was mostly just like kind of a, remember when he bullied Tua incessantly kind of thing, more than it was like, hey, we haven't had a ton of rookies start on our team, because there's only like one rookie who's been in a real shot to start. And obviously that was like Dallas Turner, which that could just be based off of him being Dallas Turner and like his development path more than anything else. But like, you know, last year we saw Jaquelin Roy play a decent amount. You know, he didn't even make the team this year. So I think that kind of underscores how much being a rookie wasn't part of that equation. But like Ivan Pace played a ton last year. He was not just a rookie, he's an undrafted rookie. So I don't know that we have a ton of evidence that that there's an on-field bias against rookies. More that it's just kind of a reputation he's picked up that may have more to do with him being a head coach than as a defensive coordinator.
Let's go to Hopeful Vikings Pessimist, who asks, for a race parallel universe corner in a universe where the Vikings re-sign Cousins, resulting in Darnold going to the Falcons, assuming everything else in the offseason is unchanged, do the Vikings still win the game?
It feels like yes, just because of I just have a lot of trust in Kevin O'Connell to figure that kind of stuff out. But Cousins doesn't survive that offensive line situation, right? Like he just doesn't. Like he probably just dies again, right? Like I can't see how he would get through that.
I can't imagine they'd be signing a bunch of people on defense with paying Cousins.
Yeah, no, like if we're doing like the full, like we're not just swapping the 2 quarterbacks, but we're also taking into account how it changes the team dynamics. Like you probably don't have Andrew Van Ginkel, right? Like you just swapped Daniil Hunter and Jonathan Bernard. That's kind of it. Maybe a Dallas Turner, but you probably don't have the money to sign Stephon Gilmore, right? Which he didn't play in this game, but like having all of that allowed you to, you know, figure out how you're going to build your depth and understand that maybe a Caleb Evans wasn't the great fit for you. So you brought in, Fabian Moreau, right? Like I think all of or Shaq Griffin, another free agent signing that may not have been here, right? Yeah, I think that also plays a role. But even if you just swap the quarterbacks, like I just feel like, yeah, I kind of want to trust Kevin O'Connell to just figure that stuff out, figure out what works. But like Cousins can't like move, right? Like he just can't move. And I don't see how that works given that offensive line situation. So I want to say yes, but it just doesn't feel correct to say yes.
Next question is going to be from Kenneth Allen, who asks, which former Vikings player would you most want to receive a LinkedIn request from?
It's obviously Chad Greenway.
That actually, yeah, that's the only answer that works for you. For those who had missed it, I believe it was Phil Mackey received a LinkedIn request from Laquan Treadwell, and it was very funny that had happened, and he accepted it because he thought it was going to be entertaining. Kenneth Allen asks, this is the second week in a row that the offensive line has given up a lot of pressure to a defensive line that's meant to be pretty bad. I assume we should be worried going forward, but how worried, and what can the Vikings do to mitigate this pressure?
I don't think this was like a product of the players executing on what they thought their assignment was poorly. I think it was primarily, I think Blake Brandel has like the highest PFF grade among the offensive linemen. And I think he made the most mistakes, right? Because PFF, they're very open about this. PFF says, the way that they grade the players is they grade them on what they do, right? And it's pretty rare for a player to be out there in the NFL that misses more than 0.5% of his assignments. Players rarely get it wrong and stay on the field for a long time. And I think that's fine. I think it's fine to just assume that the players are correct about what their assignment is, and then just trust them on and then just grade them on the execution of that. But in this case, it just kind of falls apart a little bit. But it does help us answer this question, which is that the Vikings players individually did not execute poorly when it came to one-on-one blocking. Yeah, Brown and Neal did not, light up the earth after Brown and Neal's been having an incredible season too. So that didn't happen. But, I think for the most part, this was Aaron Jones, had a rare screw up in pass protection. Cam Akers can't be trusted ever in pass protection, and we saw that. So yeah, I think you should be worried, but I don't think it should be such a dramatic worry, because I don't think this is a talent deficit issue necessarily.
Let's go to Will, who asks, Sam Darnold was less than perfect in the Falcons game. What does he do? What does he need to do to increase his QBR from the 347-yard, 5 touchdowns, 0 interception, 78% completion rate performance?
So passer rating is constructed in a way where you have a maximum and a minimum. And if you have you've got, and I don't just mean from 0.0 to 158.3. That's also true, but rather the 4 elements that compose passer rating impact passer rating up to a point. Both positive and negative. And so if you have better than a 77.5% completion rate, any completion rate above that does not improve your passer rating. If you have anything more than 11.5, I think it's 11.5, it was 10.5 touchdown percentage, anything more than that is not going to improve your passer rating. 12.5 yards per attempt, anything above that is not going to improve your passer rating. Same thing on the negative side. I think it's 0. It's a 30% completion rate, something like that. I don't know. Whatever it is, once you go below that, it's not going to hurt your passer rating more. So there's a cap on both ends of it. So it is yards per attempt, touchdown rate, interception rate, completion rate. Those are the 4 elements. And in order to get a perfect passer rating, you need a 77.5% completion rate or better. Got it. 0.0% interception rate. Got it. Like I said, 10.5% touchdown rate. Got it. You need a 12.5 yards per attempt mark. And Darnold only had 12.43 yards per attempt. So if he had thrown for 3 more yards on the same number of attempts, just 3 more yards, he would have had a 158.3.
That's ridiculous. That's the one thing.
Yeah, it was 3 more yards.
One thing that. Whatever. Yeah. Let's go to Skimbleshanks the Railway Cat. I mean, seriously, I know we've said
it's just stupid. We've been using it for 40 years.
Yep.
That's the only reason we use it. It's so stupid.
We use the line so often that being technically correct is the best kind of correct. But seriously. Let's go to Skimbleshanks the Railway Cat. At this point in the season, the Vikings, Lions, and Packers are combined 28-3 when not playing each other. How do all three teams go about blowing that lead? That is truly excellent.
Yeah, I think it was. Well, I mean, it's a record, so I'm not sure anybody was first. But the first time I saw it was Ben Baldwin tweeting about it. And like the teams that they lost to all have a winning record. Like if you combine the three teams that they lost to, their record, they all have a winning record. So Jesus, outstanding. But yeah, I mean, these teams are all destined for first round exits, right? Like that. Well, I guess the Lions can't if they win out, right? Who can get the first seed? I think it's just the Eagles are the only team that can get the first seed aside from the Lions, Vikings, and Packers. Maybe there's another team I'm missing, but like you could engineer a situation where the Eagles, who I guess have like a crisis between AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts, like I don't know, it just blew up in one of my group chats today, and I was like, what? They don't like each other anymore?
Hate to see it this late in the season. Hate to see it.
Yeah, it couldn't happen to a better franchise. That's so sad. But but like what? So that's probably blowing up. I don't know. But if they, win out and the Lions like lose 2 games or something like that, I think the Eagles have a chance to get that top seed. In that case, you can get 3 first-round exits, and that would be incredibly funny. And that would be your 28-3 blown lead.
I mean, the fact that it's possible hurts.
Yeah, they also like can't play each other, which I think you can arrange that, right? Like 3, 6, yeah. But very, very specific circumstances.
Yeah, it's the scene in basketball where they're trying to figure out the playoffs, and it goes awry.
Yeah.
Let's go to Michael, who asks, for Arif's psycho killer. I know. Great. I corner. What is it about Sam Darnold that makes him look like David Byrne in the large suit in the first half, and then, well, like a psycho killer in the second half?
I gotta be honest, we've had a lot of corner names come up, a ton. I've liked some of them. I've hated most of them. Psycho Killer Kiskasay corner is outstanding. Outstanding. Good job, Michael. What is it about the large suit? Okay. Which, by the way, if you do a large suit meme, people will think it's like Kanye you're referencing. And like David Byrne did it first, man. What is it about Sam Darnold? I just like.
It's clear that this is the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where we're at.
Yeah.
Let's go to Scott, who asks, in Arif's Middle Earth corner.
Wow,
Yeah,
you were trying to be racist, huh?
Wow, really?
Hey, Bangladesh, not in the Middle East, man. Figure it out.
No one was. So for Uncle Arif's Middle Earth corner,
I knew you were gonna do
what
that.
gift does Lady Gaga bestow upon Sam Darnold before setting off with the 2020? Yeah, we've gone off the rails. I want to apologize. What gift does she bestow upon Sam Darnold before setting off with the 2024 Fellowship of the Vikings?
All right, so this was technically not a gift that Lady Galadriel bestowed upon any member of the Fellowship or to the Fellowship in general. So unlike the Elven Cloaks, the Lembas, the Rope, the 3 strands of golden hair, etc., the File, I'm going to go with actually what Thorin gave Frodo, which was the Mithril shirt. Because, like, who needs that more than Sam Darnold right now?
Who needs that more than a quarterback playing behind a Vikings offensive line?
Yeah, so I think Lady Galadriel, because I mean, like they were rebuilding the relationship between the elves and the dwarves, and also Gimli was so taken by Lady Galadriel's beauty that it seems like he asked for 1 strand of hair, he received 3. It feels like he might respond in kind at a later date with the mithril shirt. So she bestows that upon Sam Darnold. He then probably runs through almost literally the NFC North.
Yep, we're off the rails here. Good. Luke Braun's dad asks, how do we prop up CJ Ham to be the Walter Payton Man of the Year? I campaigned hard for Rudolph, and I was let down.
Yeah, CJ Ham, I think, has it in a way that Rudolph doesn't. I think he just has it. Not like the award, but he's got the sauce to be the kind of guy that wins the award. Do you remember when Greg Olson was just complaining about that?
It was great. Listening to his complaint about being nominated 3 times and then you couldn't be nominated again. And he was like, it looked like I was going to win. And then a hurricane hit Houston.
Yeah,
and
that was
JJ
incredible.
Watt won.
Yeah, I was like, Jesus, man, this does not look good for you. But you just kept going, and at a certain point, you just respect it, right?
I wanted that gold little guy on my jersey, and I just wanted that for the rest of my days. Nope, never got it because a hurricane hit Houston.
Yeah. He was like, I was up against 2 Hall of Famers like Larry Fitzgerald. All right, dude. It just feels like it's in such bad taste to complain about not winning an award for being a humanitarian that doing it for a national audience just circles back around at some point. Now I'm on his side.
It's so good.
If you have the temerity to complain that a hurricane hit Houston, yeah, dude, you should have got nominated some more times. You had it tough.
The rule says you can't be nominated more than 3 times, and that's oh man. I have seen bitter. I have seen petty. That man is Tom Petty. That man. Oh, don't come around here no more. I loved that for him. That was beautiful.
And a hurricane hit Houston. Jesus, man.
Yeah, that was awesome. Well, let's go to
Relatedly.
Yes. Let's go to Tracy, who asks, for a Reeves Saints rebuilding corner, the Saints have the option to move on from Derek Carr this offseason, but with a considerable dead cap. If a certain article convinces the front office to blow it up, would you consider doing an Osweiler-like trade to pick up some draft capital from them?
For Derek Carr, abstractly kind of, but not really. You've got Daniel Jones, which I understand Derek Carr is better than Daniel Jones, but I think the thing is you can't. The Vikings do need draft capital, but the cap hit is just so extraordinary that you'd have to grab draft capital that I think the Saints were just that's so high that the Saints are just probably not going to want to. Man, they're in a bad spot though. They might give up a lot. They might not give up a first, but they might give up everything else, which I guess is what the Ricky Williams trade was. If you can get the Ricky Williams trade plus Derek Carr. Oh, yeah, for people who are unfamiliar, the Browns traded for Brock Osweiler and received a 2nd-round pick for it because Brock Osweiler was bad and the Houston Texans didn't want to start him anymore, but he was a huge cap hit. So the Browns were like, we have a ton of cap space. We could take that off your hands for you. But you're going to have to give us something. And it was I think the first time we've seen that.
Because at the time, this sort of thing exists in the NBA way more than the NFL. It's only happened in the NBA. Recently, only 2 or 3 times has it happened in the NFL. But this happens all the time in the NBA.
Yeah, and technically the trade was more there's other moving parts, but functionally they received a 2nd-round pick to take on the cap hit of Brock Osweiler. So if they could get all of the other picks in the Saints draft besides the first to take on the Derek Carr contract, plus you've got Derek Carr, that's not a bad backup situation to have for your rookie quarterback. Yeah, you could let Daniel Jones walk, which I don't think you could get a compensatory for. I don't know how that works anymore if they don't actually sign him.
Yeah,
whatever. Cool. Do it if it's a lot, but don't do it if it's not a lot, which it is a very dumbed down version of most of my answers to these mailbag questions.
Yeah, that's you found your pattern and you can decide whether or not to stick with it or avoid it. Let's go to Debatin' Manning, who asks, for James's divorce corner, I want to mention, I've never been legally divorced.
Not legally.
Never legally married either. We'll get to that one day. How does a team handle an impending separation despite all the good times and knowing that staying together would be a bad decision? Look,
what a great question.
That is a good question, and you have to look at it in terms of success. You know, it's staying together for the kids. In this case, Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson, it's just not going to keep it. He's going to be happier somewhere else. He's going to do better somewhere else. And he knows that if he takes a gigantic discount now, he is not going to get the same opportunities. So it's better for him to do this now. Now, no good marriage ends in divorce. Or at least that's the thing I have told myself a million times. But like, no good marriage ends in divorce. This has
been a point of contention on the pod.
Yeah, this has come up a couple of times. Arif has really tested my faith to a point of
look, I'm just saying.
No, we're not rehashing this. I would much rather rehash whether or not Vinatieri is a Hall of Famer than rehash this. Like,
okay, no, he's obviously not. But
no, we've gone round for round on that. I know. I gave up. I gave up trying to convince you, and we're done. I'd rather go through that. That's a deep cut. That hasn't happened in like 6 years. But
Harrison Butker is going to enter the Hall of Fame before Vinatieri does, and I hate to say this because I hate Butker, but he deserves it more.
Anyway, point of all of this is that it's the time to do it. You do it. You rip off the Band-Aid. Now, if you guys have some sort of a triumphant moment, great. But you need that. You're gonna really need that one moment in order to make it worth it. Otherwise, it's time. It's time to let this caged bird fly.
I just feel like the metaphor here perfectly demonstrates why a good marriage can end in a divorce.
Let's go to Room Bullshit.
Okay, there's a clear metaphor in the question, right? It says Sam Darnold wins the Super Bowl.
Crimes corner. If Luke Braun committed a crime, what fake name would he go with?
Luke Laurent. So Sam Darnold winning the Super Bowl.
If the Jets and Giants merged, keeping the best players they had, how good would they be?
It's not that great. They still don't have a quarterback. It'd be like Aaron Rodgers, but they'd have like a really stunning defense because you have Sauce Gardner. You don't have to rely on Deontay Banks anymore. They've got a pretty good linebacker situation because they got Matt Milano. Well, not Matt Milano. He's a Buffalo Bill. But they've got, like Quincy Williams. They've got like a pretty good linebacker situation. The problem is that the offensive line doesn't get that much better. You have maybe the best receiving core in the NFL, which is crazy because this is a Vikings podcast. But like you would have not that great a team because they're not really covering each other's weaknesses a ton. But okay, so former Jets quarterback Sam Darnold, if he wins the Super Bowl with the Vikings and they split up in, say, a divorce,
would that not Sam Darnold, Jogger asks, who does Sam Darnold sign with next year? Of all the semi-realistic options, who would you like him to sign with?
Okay, it's not going to be the Saints. Like you mentioned the Saints, but like they're in cap hell. There's no way they can afford Sam Darnold. We went through this because it was like you can't pick a team that's picking in the top like 8 or a team that like is set on who their quarterback is going to be. So like a team picking in the top 8, I think could be Indianapolis, but they're probably going to stick with Anthony Richardson, right? The Giants are probably going to be drafting, right? So like the Browns are almost certainly drafting, right? Because they don't have like the cap hit for that kind of thing. But you go down just a little bit further down and you find somebody who's not in a position to grab a quarterback, especially a weak quarterback class. You got to look at the Rams, right? Matt Stafford might retire this year.
It's such an interesting prospect, especially because they've got, it's the same, like it's a similar type of offense. And look at the weapons that are around.
Yeah, you could Puka, like you're getting the back end of Cooper Kupp. That's true, but like you've got Puka Nacua. that's awesome, right? Demarcus Robinson is like pretty good now. Like that, like you're probably not going to get a ton out of Tutu Atwell, but like that's like a pretty decent 1-2. And then like Cooper Kupp could be like, the way Cousins and Adam Thielen, like it's like, okay, the Adam Thielen thing is probably not going to work out for that much longer. We'll move on. We'll draft a first round pick. Puka Nacua is our guy. And then it's just like, you've got your Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson situation. So get that. I think that the offense, like you said, is very similar. The defensive situation, not nearly as good, but they've got a lot of pieces, right? They got Kobe Turner. They've got Jared Verse. They've got a lot of pieces. So I think it's probably the Rams. And that is if Sam Darnold doesn't win the Super Bowl and re-sign with the Vikings.
I mean, speaking of Adam Thielen, shout out to him for a 100-yard game this weekend. The ghost of Adam Thielen is still out there.
Yeah, pretty incredible. Also, like, was it this weekend he had that touchdown taken away, and then he got it later in the game? Was that this weekend?
I actually didn't see that touchdown. If it was
okay, it might have been last week. In which case, Adam Thielen has been just going off for like 2 weeks. But like, man, so this is like the thing about the Eagles, right? We're talking about them getting potentially the first seed. They're like 3 points over the Panthers. Like, that was it. The Panthers are a lot better now than they were for most of the season because Bryce Young, I guess he just did need to get benched for a little bit because he's been playing like really well. But the Eagles are like trying to get the first, like you can't be at a spot where you're trying to be the best team in the NFL and you almost get beat by a team that's like, well, you have to admit the quarterback got better. Like you can't.
They tried to Vikings it. They absolutely tried to Vikings it. Historically speaking, that was I believe that's the verb for it.
Yeah.
It's not great. We've seen it too many times. Logan Bolsharif asks, question for James and Arif's Fargo corner. I have to drive to Fargo this week, and it's going to be colder and worse than normal. What should I do to occupy my time? Well, it's actually, cold, yes, but it's not like the weather is going to be truly awful. I know this because I'm driving down this week from down Grand Forks to Fargo down to Bloomington. So, but Egan question, yeah. So, I prefer that drive to the drive Fargo to Grand Forks because that 3.5 hours feels a lot shorter than the 1 hour from Fargo to Grand Forks. But what should you do? Stop at Clearwater and get a bunch of sugar, and then when you start to dip after having that gigantic donut, stop in Fergus, get a little bit of gas, get a little bit of soda, keep going, and push through, and maybe listen to some of the bonus episodes over on patreon.com/norsecode for $3. Yeah, that was the obvious shill. I feel like we can do better. Arif, what's your other show that you don't torment your hosts on?
I'm drawing a blank, but I do have another show, the 60-minute drill.
There we go. Okay. Took a moment. Check that out, or any number of Arif's failed podcasts like Wide Left. Also, question for Arif's parenting corner. I've noticed that my 4-year-old has a severe case of the Mondays at daycare drop-off. He often tells me he's sad the weekend is over and wishes it could last longer. How do I break it to him that he's got 60-plus years left of this? Any alternative recommendations? Lie. Or open with a joke.
I read this and my jaw dropped. Like, your 4-year-old is treating daycare like it's work? I guess this sets him up, right? like he's becoming acclimated.
Montessori schools do this. Like they're setting them up. They're setting them up early.
That's the goal of a Montessori school. Yeah. It's not like a diverse, well-rounded education that, accelerates the development path for a more, fully well-rounded adult. It's to make sure that the workforce and the child are in sync, simpatico, as it were. Not that I would know anything about that, but
sorry, every time that my girlfriend has referred to Burrow as in sync because of his haircut, every time he comes on the screen with his hair, like with his highlights and everything, I instinctively name a and I didn't even listen to like boy band stuff in high school when this was coming out, but instinctively I end up coming up with a song title from like either Backstreet Boys, 98 Degrees, NSYNC, or whatever. Tonight it was tearing at my heart.
Oh man,
when he threw a terrible pass. So every time, so sorry, I got distracted by the highlights. I don't even know where to go with that. Yeah,
I don't have any recommendations for this 4-year-old who has a job.
Lie or open with a joke is it seems to be the best answer though. Lie to your kids, folks.
Why isn't your kid excited about daycare, man? There's something wrong with your daycare.
My son used to love daycare before he got there, and then was like, I want to leave immediately by lunch. So maybe he was just there for the food. Actually, that there might be something to that. Don
Is this the one that ate humans? What were they serving?
That's not a... Spoken to him in a long time. Don from Ohio asks, I'm burning through this. Thanks, Arif. You were filling up. I'm a hate camel, and my hump was low, and now I'm filling up my hump of hate. I'm gonna paraphrase Bill Hicks
because
thing. Don from Ohio asks, is Cam Bynum a lock for the next season of Dancing with the Stars? There might be something to that.
There might be. I will say that I don't keep track of like which athletes end up on Dancing with the Stars, but my perception has been that they're really recognizable. So I don't know, but I feel like they gotta, right? Like I feel like you gotta give them a shot.
I mean, there's been a couple this year that definitely got attention. Let's go to Deez, who asks, which will yield the highest return of my $100? Buying crypto from the Hawk Tua girl, betting on Adrian Peterson making an attempt to return to the NFL, investing in a Mr. Beath healthy workplace training course, or in a bundle of dark magic books Arif accidentally parks near. We should go there again. That was really good sushi.
Yeah, it was good sushi. I didn't pick it for anyway. I think that like this category of things has like a one thing's not like the other, which is that 3 of these things are like hilariously meant to be bad investments, but like Adrian Peterson might make another return attempt to the NFL. Like that one seems more likely, right? Like buying crypto from the Hawk Tua girl, obvious rug pull, turned out to be a rug pull. Turns out that the person advising her has pretended that he's never even heard of the term rug pull, despite working in the crypto space and having like an NFT Twitter avatar. If you don't know what happened with the Hawk Tua girl, first of all, I envy you. It's incredible.
Yeah,
keep it up.
The Hawk Tua cryptocurrency scam. These are not words that belong together.
Yeah. I showed the sentence to a small Victorian child, and his head exploded. No, yeah, I mean, she released a meme coin for the Hawk Tua, the podcast that she has made a lot of money on already. You know, I want to like when she first started making money, and a bunch of people started hating her. I was like, man, whatever, dude. It's so hard to just like make money. You might as well capitalize into like 15 minutes of fame. That's fine. And I haven't listened to a word of her podcast. Maybe it's good. I have my doubts, but like I can't really judge without listening to it. And I haven't listened to it.
I did listen to, well, it was on Twitter, the reveal of Pookie, because I did want to laugh hysterically if it was going to be Sam Darnold.
So how was that clip? Was it engaging?
No, it was not. And
perfect.
Yeah, I'm not saying she shouldn't have a show. It's like a
top 5 podcast. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's right before the election. They someone pointed out that the top 5 podcasts on iTunes were like, oh my God, look at all these conservative podcasts. Like we should have known that the election would go this way. And it's like 4 conservative podcasts if you count Joe Rogan, which I know a lot of people object to the idea that you would characterize that. I'm not here to argue that. My point is that the fifth one was Haktua, and it was ranked number 2. And then you take a look at the Spotify play. I just saw it like today, the Spotify rankings, and Haktua is like number 3. Like it's got staying power ? Which again, normally I'd be like, good for her. It doesn't concern me. But then like the rug pull thing where so she releases a coin, a cryptocurrency where she and a bunch of the people that she was working with already have some in reserve. She claims that's not true, but I don't believe it. So I just want to, that's her story. I just wanted to put that out there. And they hype up this cryptocurrency so that people buy into it and increase the price of the currency. And then they sell their holdings of the currency, which when they don't own any of it, it no longer has value because the value only exists through their association with it. So not only does the sell-off lead to the price dropping from normal demand, supply, whatever, but the people who are left with the cryptocurrency never have any chance of like recovering its value. So I guess she stole like $30 million from people this way. I don't know that she was the mastermind behind this. Again, I don't know her. Maybe she is, maybe she's smart. But like it would surprise me because the crypto space is very specific and they use influencers a lot like this. But yeah, that it was obviously a bad investment from the get-go. And Adrian Peterson making a return attempt to the NFL does seem actually kind of likely to make you money on a bet as opposed to buying crypto from like an obvious rug pull situation. Also, Mr. Beast has a whole set of controversies that have nothing to do with how bad the food is. And by bad, I don't mean it tastes bad, but I mean like there's like mold in it and stuff. And also
the Lunchable thing. Yeah.
Yeah. The Lunchable thing. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like we've heard that it's been a bad workplace for Mr. Beast for like 6-7 years now. And now it's like a thing. I don't know, man. Now it matters, I guess.
So I just looked it up, by the way, because I wanted to be sure. Okay. Magnus Books and Herbs is still open across the street from MoMA.
Oh, thank God.
So that is open from noon to 6. I would have expected that to be more of a late night option.
Noon to 6.
Noon to 6. Looks like every day, noon to 6. So
that smacks of like the only person who's running the store is the owner. Kind of like those are the kind of hours I'm getting off of that.
Yep, nothing else. You will not get me there till at 6:01. I am physically kicking people out with a broom, and I'm not making a witch joke. I just need something with width. I need something with width in order to get people out. Nolan Kaler asks, for North Code, our Winnipeg Jets have seen their winning ways slip a bit in recent weeks, falling behind their neighbors to the south in the Minnesota Wild in the standings. The only rational explanation is that, much like the Vikings do with the Blue Bombers, they steal their best attributes through magic. What insightful hockey and magic knowledge can Arif attribute to this shift in record and cosmic Corsi energy?
Hey, I know what Corsi is. I've heard of that. Sorry, that's my answer.
Next question. We're going to end with Tank B, who asks, for Arif's time is a flat circle corner. For a second time, the Minnesota Vikings find themselves with a former Jets quarterback leading the team to an 11-2 record. Odds of this happening twice now aside, what sort of defrauding should Sam do to celebrate in his home state of California? I'm not sure which part of the state he's originally from. Obviously, if he's from the San Francisco area, he needs to start have a tech startup of some sort. But what about the other parts of the state?
Okay, so first of all, he's like from Orange County, like just straight like from Orange County. So there's that. Keep that in mind. Historically, the type of defrauding you get from Orange County comes in the form of Republican politicians. But who knows, right? California has their own share of bad Democratic politicians, famously. So it could be any politician, really. So that's one. Two, you have a lot of fraud in the Los Angeles area for all of the obvious reasons. It's the industry where you get famous, that's the city where that industry is, pretty easy to figure out how fraud works in that situation. I would say it's not going to be the tech startup thing because that's Northern California. I think it's going to be like a grifting sort of thing, like entertainment industry, politician. If it was a tech startup thing, it'd be like a Juicero thing where it's like, here's a product that everyone can kind of just have on their own without any particular like reason for you to invest more into connecting it to the internet or whatever. But we're going to charge a subscription and you have to buy a complicated machine and it always has to be connected to the internet so that we can collect your data sort of thing. So that's probably where that fraud comes from. I will say, like, isn't Aaron Rodgers also from Orange County? I mean, actually, I should take a look.
Sure is. Although I feel like Aaron Rodgers still will end up being a part of like a catalytic converter theft ring, or ends up being like the kingpin of one of those like car break-in thefts, like that happened famously out in San Francisco, to the point where when I visited, all the parking lots said, do not leave anything in your car. This parking lot is under surveillance, blah, blah, like, and everywhere. It was like that. It's like, all right, I'm not leaving a battery in here. Like, everything is apparently getting just broken out. People were literally, literally had their trunks open.
That's incredible. I just looked it up. Aaron Rodgers is from essentially basically a whole other state. He's from the Sacramento Valley area, whatever.
The kind of wine country, not actual wine country, kind of wine country. Okay,
kind of wine country. Yeah.
I'm familiar. That wedding was unpleasant. I don't just say that because you think I think all weddings are unpleasant. No, just that
Wait,
particular.
Were you working or were you a guest?
I was a guest. It was last year's wedding that I've described the wedding before.
Oh my gosh!
Where it was raining on me, literally raining on me while I was in line at the front of the Longtime listeners of the show are aware of how much I enjoyed my time in Sacramento last year. It's great. Let's do that. He can defraud everyone through that, or
by winning a Super Bowl and convincing the team to stay together. So you don't have like an ugly
that's going to be
separation.
It for this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Arif, what do you have to plug from your website, wideleft.football?
A very specific way to ask that question. It is both a football website and a political website. And of course, one of the major political questions is about, how the state should orient its incentives to kind of produce the most optimal family unit. There's a bunch of non.
You are not writing about this. What do you have on your website that you are going to need to plug?
Okay, so
I can pull the plug on this episode whenever I want. I can hit the space bar and the recording just stops.
So
get your plug in now.
I left off football. We've got a recap of the Atlanta Falcons game. That's pretty fun. We're going to get Luke Braun's part 2. Hopefully he submits it. I don't know. Part 2 to the breakdown of the Vikings defense, Brian Flores. I'm probably going to write a piece on the way that we think of close games and one-score games and stuff like that. I want to pull from Ty Schulter's piece over 538 from 5 years ago now, I think, on close game and win probability. Check that over at Wide Left Off Football. I don't think I actually, despite the jokes, I don't think I have any political pieces coming up soon. Kind of missed the wave when it comes to writing about violence adjacent to the healthcare system. I think we're done with takes on that one. Those are the pieces over at Wide Left Off Football. Again, check out 60-Minute Drill. We had some issues with our podcast provider, so we didn't upload anything last week, but it's all figured out. So you get 2 episodes this week. That's awesome. Should be a ton of fun.
So that'll be it for this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. We will be back on Thursday live at the Union 32 Craft House. So check us out there. Show up sometime about 7 o'clock. Recording should start about 7:30. So for Arif, my name is James. And just remember that we both agree that no good marriage ends in divorce.
We don't agree with that.
We will be there on Thursday.
That's not universal.
Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, and wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif of and he can be found on Twitter at ArifNFL. I am your producer and host, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN or at my personal account at BigMono. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can do so in a couple of different ways. You can go to patreon.com/NorseCode and donate there. For $3.50 a month, you get bonus material and more. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode for a one-time donation, or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com and pick up some Norse Code merch. Any questions or comments that cannot fit in a tweet can be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, we thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this.
Hey, all things are possible through the power of Ben DiNucci.